So when we talked last time, we established that nationalized healthcare is the only model of healthcare that makes sense.
Yes. And one of the things that we also established that, corporate healthcare run as a for-profit entity with the responsibility to its shareholders is actually a model that's fundamentally broken at its core, right? And it's one of those things that we're going to have a problem with continually, as we go along, which is why we established a nationalized healthcare program. Really is inevitable and is in the best interest for, basically everyone. Real quick, I need to establish, we're bowling right now, so I'm going to be right back because I'm up, and then we'll pick up in a second.
Yeah. So, if nationalized healthcare is the only model that works, how are we going to pay for it?
Okay, so and that's the $1 trillion question right now, right? It's the multi-trillion-dollar question, and it's the big question, right? We have right now 23, 25, a couple of dozen Democratic candidates running around the country talking about their plans for healthcare, and whenever they get to that question, what is the answer that they're giving?
Tax on the wealthy.
Tax on the wealthy, and why do you think they say that?
Because they don't want to look like they're raising taxes on everyday people, normal people, working class people.
And I guess my question at that point is that realistic? I mean, does that pass the smell test for you?
No.
Is that a yes or no?
That's a no.
That's a no? Okay. All right, you're actually up right now. Okay, so just a second ago, we talked about how we pay for this, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about, there being a tax on the wealthy, and I asked you if it passed the smell test. And the reason I kind of talked about that way is right now we have a bunch of candidates running around the country talking about their plans. And they're talking about nationalized health care, and they're talking about family leave and free college for all. And whenever they talk about how they pay for it, the standard talking point is that there will be a tax on the extremely wealthy. As a voter, as well as a candidate, one of the questions I have is, how many times are we going back to that well, and how much revenue is it actually going to generate? And I think if we have to, look at what a thing really is going to cost, if we say that we're going to pay for this huge program with just a tax on the wealthy, it doesn't exactly sound right.
Yeah. So inevitably, our taxes are going to have to go up, right?
Well, yes and no. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll explain that in just a second.
Okay.
I'm up,
right.
but we'll get into that.
Okay.
Anyway, so when we talk about there being a yes and no on whether or not taxes will go up, we kind of have to break that conversation into something more relatable and applicable to our current situation, right?
Okay.
So we know this is going to cost a lot of money. The estimates that we see are that nationalized healthcare over 10 years would cost somewhere around $35 trillion, which is a huge amount of money. Right? So we're talking about $35 trillion over 10 years. So I guess the first question we have to ask when we're making sure people understand what the cost of this really is how much would you say that Americans spend right now on health care every year?
Probably $1 trillion.
And that's a good guess, because $1 trillion is a lot of money, right? But it's actually significantly more than that. Right now, in this country, we spend about $3.5 to $3.7 trillion a year.
Okay.
So that's annualized. When you extrapolate that over 10 years, you wind up with about $37 trillion.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about taxes going up, I like to look at it as a redistribution of funds. Right. So right now, on a person's paycheck, they'll see, a line for their taxes, right? And then they see a line for their Social Security, right? And right now they have a line for their health insurance, which is, I don't know, like Cigna or United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, that kind of thing, right? But there's a huge number right there, and it's automatically already on your paycheck. when we talk about how we're going to pay for healthcare, I don't want to lump it in with all our taxes, right? Because what we're talking about is a transformative entitlement program, similar to Social Security.
Okay.
So ideally, you would have your taxes, your Social Security, and then you would have a line item that just says healthcare.
Okay.
And right now, if we do it like that, it's going to look very similar to what you have, right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you saying that we would essentially break even?
Once again, it's a yes and no.
Okay.
And when I say it's a yes and no, that's basically a starting point, right?
Yeah.
So at the very least, if we're already spending $3.5 trillion a year on healthcare, and extra, we roll that out over 10 years, we're already going to spend $35 to $37 trillion in total. It would look on its face like at the very least we would break even, right?
Okay.
But we also have the opportunity to save on a lot of costs.
Okay.
So